Welcome to the Good Mood Show. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you get a good mood every single week. Today, we're talking with Kimberly Braun, who has spent over a decade as a monastic nun with a master's in theology and a special focus upon the adult spiritual journey. She lives to inspire others to connect to and live from divine love. She's an ordained minister, a Reiki Master, a TEDx speaker. Her TEDx is actually exceptional. Look it up. It was very good. And a former meditation faculty at one of my favorite places, the Omega Institute. Kimberly has served tens of thousands of people through her writing, speaking, retreats, and courses. And I couldn't be more excited to have this conversation. Kimberly, welcome to the Good Mood Show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's great to be with you. Thank you. And I love hearing that you love Omega. That's an awesome place.
Yes, it's a very special place. And I think it's cool that you were so connected there. Do you still do work with them?
No, I taught there for, as you mentioned, 7 years. And then the natural progression, I just haven't had the time to go back and teach it. I've been caught up in other ways, but it's been rising up in my mind a little bit to explore it again.
Well, I know you have a free gift for our audience. Kimberly is offering her ebook, Sexy, Spiritual, and Serene, which has 7 tips to be your best. And if you're already a subscriber of our newsletter, we're going to send you a copy this week. And if you'd like a copy, you can go to goodmoodshow.com. And as you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a copy instantly, or just reach out on the contact page. So thank you for sending that. And we're always looking for ways to feel our best. But I wanted to start with the 10 plus years you spent as a monastic nun. In your book, Miracles in the Naked Light, you say that the monastic life is romanticized to be this peaceful, serene, easy life. But you say that kind of the opposite is true. Why is life so challenging as a nun?
I mean, it's a great question, because let me segue by, in my service and even just walking around in the world, oftentimes people will say, oh, if I could just get away, if I could just go join a monastery, things would be easy. If I could just, that if they step out of their lives the way their lives are, that all of a sudden the location is going to make a difference in their inner peace. And what you discover when you enter the silence is there are some ways that it's true, right? If you have a very, very stressful job, getting away from that stressful job can let you begin to relax. So there is some truth. But largely, when you're living in silence, what happens is you take yourself with you. And we are the location of whether there is peace or not peace. And in monastic life, what happens, and I loved this, is anything within you, any of the unconscious, and I think it's pretty well proven that we're about 95% unconscious.
Right. I believe that.
Like that's a really big part of who and what we are. That unconscious that is not yet resolved, not yet healed, not yet released, whatever it may be, comes forward in order to be healed and released. But the experience of that is not always easy. It sparks fear. Like when we encounter the dark parts of ourselves, maybe unprocessed anger or debilitating senses of abandonment, or all of us have a variety of wounds that we're meant to work through. In silence, those things come forward, and they come forward in a really dramatic way. So you want to be a warrior when you enter monastic life, and not go in naively thinking that all of a sudden it's going to be smooth sailing on cool and calm waters.
So I love the way you just described that it's not the physical location where we are. It's really our inner state of being that determines the peace or the struggle that we're experiencing. I think even not being in a monastery, all of those challenges, the unconscious fear of abandonment, the anger, the sadness that always rear their head anyway in real life. They just may show up as somebody in the parking lot that we think is upsetting us, or somebody at work that we think is abandoning us. And so we still have an opportunity to work through those challenges when we're not in a monastery.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. And then sometimes when we don't want to face ourselves in this society, we can distract ourselves.
Then there's distraction, right? So if we don't move to drugs, alcohol, media, or the other myriad of ways, overworking, over-exercising to distract ourselves. Yeah. But if we actually want to deal with it, and that's what the Good Mood Show is about, is let's deal with these emotions so that we can find authentic joy, authentic peace, and authentic love. And that kind of leads me into my next question. In your book, you say that we are in the world to be love.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved that. What does it mean to you, and how do we be love?
Thank you. That is such a great question, right? Because I'm still on my path. I'm still exploring what does it mean to be love. My experience, and I think ultimately, even though we have beliefs that we may ascribe to, or we have aspirations that we hold, ultimately it's our experience and our reflection on our experience that roots us in the deep inner wisdom and freedom. So my experience, when I say that word, I'm saying it very intentionally. My experience from an early age was that there was this pulsing source in which I was living and moving and having my being. And that pulsing source had qualities that we could define as freedom, as all-encompassing love, as compassion, as bubbling joy, if you will. And I learned through my experience that love is an exchange. It's an energy of exchange. So being love is expressing ourselves without reservations, not worrying whether we're going to be accepted or rejected. Being that source. And love is also the giving and the receiving, the dance with others, with the world around us, being open to the exchange that happens. So love then to me is an agency that has the fruit of a liberation and a union to it. And embody is a really strong word for me when it comes to love. So I think ultimately what happens is our very cells begin to vibrate that love. And as we walk, there is a presence that we are that is so vibrating that love, we don't even need to say a word necessarily. That's what I think would be the full expression of being love in the world. But
I want to be that. I want to get there.
yes.
So how do I walk around just vibrating these feelings of unconditional love, and so that everywhere I go, everything is lit up and bright because of my loving presence? What's in the way? What's in the way of that? I do believe all of us have the ability to get there, but what gets in the way?
Well, largely fear, but fear cloaks itself in a lot of different disguises. And fear to come into contact with the beauty and power that we are. You know, our world is, so in my opinion, I feel like as a human species, we're still about 3 years old. We're really, really young. And therefore, we're really relating in our world from a place of a lot of survival and a lot of fear. And that fear shows up as a disconnection from ourselves, because to be connected to ourselves might be too risky. We might find ourselves alone. We might encounter something we don't know how to handle. We are always, when we make the choice to become love in the world, we are always taken into the unknown. And that's why I think having some support systems for that process are so helpful, because we can choose to not go there because we don't want to be in the unknown. I mean, how many of us have compromised, like stayed in a certain friendship or a relationship or a situation just because we knew what we could expect?
Yeah, even if it's an abusive situation or a situation that doesn't make us very happy, but it's familiar and comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. And we're made to have security, but the spiritual path is a security in the unknown. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but as we walk that path, we discover we begin to penetrate these paradoxes in very new ways. And in penetrating the paradoxes, we come to some of the fundamental paradoxes of our own being, and that's that we are both timeless and we're operating within a time-space continuum. That's a massive paradox.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we're eternal, and at the same time we're living in a very mortal body.
Right, right. And like the paradox that like we can purport like we are one. Well,
Mm.
yes, you and I are one. We could probably meditate and come to a deep place of experiencing the sweetness of that oneness. And we are looking at each other on this podcast. Your name isn't Kimberly. My name is not Matt. So there we've got a paradox right there that the we are one doesn't repress the individuality. It
Yeah.
actually celebrates the individuality.
We've gotten so deep so quick, and I love it. And and your whole book is about this calling that really you've had since you were a child, but a calling to build this feat of architecture. And you said that when we follow a calling, there's always grace. How can we know that we're following a calling, that it's actually a calling from a higher power and not just from our egoic survival mind?
So, one word, and there's a variety of ways and practices. One word that I would say catches that is intimacy with ourselves. So, as we come close to ourselves, as we truly get to know ourselves, we discover that we have the inner guidance to know these things. For instance, let's say I'm experiencing something that I would define as a calling. If I'm come close to myself, there are going to be qualities such as a wordless peace, a sense of expansion instead of tension or contraction. There are going to be these natural inclinations to lean into it, even if it's scary. And when we learn to pick up these cues, and the greatest gift we can give ourselves is to get to know ourselves. As we learn to pick up these cues, then we become skilled with the subtlety of it. Because sometimes it's obvious, like building that monastery. I mean, I literally heard it. And I had been living in silence and monasticism for so long that I had become not 100% pure as a channel, but I had become pretty clear. I mean, I was
Yeah, you
like,
meditated like 4 or 5 times a day. You prayed constantly. You were in silence all the time. You really got pretty clear understanding of what was your mind versus what wasn't. I mean, what a gift.
yeah, it's a great gift, a great gift. And I learned because I discovered it is inside, I learned that's there for all of us, that I can be of service to that for anyone, anywhere in their life, because it's not that I'm unique that way, even if my story is unique. And so that calling to build the monastery was very dramatic. But my hope is that when somebody reads it, they discover themselves, wow, I am called to the same greatness, if you will.
We
And
all are. I mean, do you believe that we all are called to greatness? Now, not all to build a monastery, but there's something I think that we all are called to do during each of our lifetimes.
yes, yes, I
And we
do.
just need to listen to that calling. So when uh I spend time in silence each morning. That's how I start my day. I have 4 children, and uh in order to have silence, I have to wake up much earlier than them just to carve out this time in this space. And I had a calling, and it was to write a book. And it was very clear. It was the same type of, I had a very clear answer. I knew it was not from me, that this was a calling. And I didn't even know what I was going to write the book about. but I just said, okay, this is what we'll do. And I started to really say, I'm going to follow this path. I don't know where it's going to lead me. And from that came the Good Mood Show. But through all of this, there was fear and challenge and lots of things to overcome. But I just continued to follow it. And I've experienced what you have said, that we experience grace when we follow this calling. For the person listening, what would you say, how could they access what that calling would be? How could they tap into it and be guided to where they should be going?
Right. And that's a big statement. And so if you are listening, the path is so unique. And one way, so there are many, many, many ways, but one way I think that's very universal is framing our orientation in our life so that we are open to hear or recognize these calls. Now, what's a good example of that? One of my messages in the book is everything is grace. Now, that's a massive statement. And that's a tricky statement to say because there's a lot of really terrible things that happen in life.
Yeah,
And
a loved one dies. And that's the first thing I thought of when I read that. Everything is grace. And I was thinking, how is when a dear loved one dies grace?
right. So great experience, great example there. What we can do to begin to discover, to hear the call, to help penetrate and go beyond the doubts and the fears, to reinforce the call. Because once we say yes to the call, and you mentioned having challenges, all along the way, we're encountering ourselves, right? And there's going to be these moments that we're like, gosh, what am I doing? Am I wasting my time? Or anything that comes up. We can take that statement. Here's one example of that intimacy. Everything is grace for me. Look at how that just shifts the whole energy of that belief or that truth. Everything is grace for me. And then we soften ourselves instead of standing against it or for it or in it. We soften ourselves with better questions that are more helpful. Not is it so, but how is it so? How is it so? And we can do this. This sounds so simplistic, but it is so powerful. We can actually do this every moment, and we can frame how we enter every moment. We can say, okay, this moment is timeless. How do I discover it's timeless? Well, I step into the moment with expectation and open heart, and I pay attention to just what's right here, right in this moment, period. And then when I move from one moment to the next, I take stock of what happened and I take it with me, because we're changed when we enter into moments that way. Now those are really simple steps, but that's right within that's exactly what we can do. Like even right now, in this moment, we can boop, stop for this one moment and give this recognition and step in with an open heart.
And that's where I feel like we can access God.
Yeah.
And it's the only time is when we become fully present in this timeless moment. I loved the way you changed that. Everything is grace for me. That just cleared up a lot. That just cleared up all my questions. Because I was saying, how is all of this grace? But all of my examples of how is that grace didn't have to do with my life.
Right.
When I look at all the experiences in my life, even the challenging ones, I see how all of them ultimately were for my greater benefit in the long run.
Right. Yes. And we have that opportunity at every moment. So like listeners to your show are making that choice for themselves. They are giving themselves the opportunity. So if you're listening, you have made such a powerful choice for yourself, just simply to be listening right in this moment, instead of doing something that contracts you away from yourself. You're stepping into, I don't know if it was Albert Einstein, but it was someone that was an innovative thinker. And they said that from the energy of the universe, we are either moving forward or we're moving backward. So even when we feel that we're stuck, how we're being stuck, we are literally either moving forward or we're moving in an opposite direction away from ourselves. I find great consolation in that because it lets me know that everything about me actually matters. My thoughts really matter. My actions matter. I may not see the fruit in the exact moment that I'm making the choice, but if it's proven that we're either moving forward or backward, then we've got reason to rejoice that we can make the choice to move forward, move forward, move forward.
And I know that you call on God through prayer often to help you move forward and make these decisions. One of the passages of the Bible that you had quoted was Luke 1:37, which says, "Nothing is impossible with God." So when we feel stuck, how is it that you call on prayer? What is it that you go to ask God to help with things where you're facing a challenge?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Do you know that has really changed for me? It used to be that way, that direct I, thou, a prayer. Oh God, I surrender myself. A lot of it was surrender, open my eyes. And it has changed a lot. There is still the I, thou, there's still the beloved. I think I'll always have a beloved spirituality where I am the lover, I'm the beloved. My object is the lover and the beloved, the eternal one. So I think that will always be there. But it's my prayer is not so much through that the inner words, it's more an opening of the vibration of my being in a wordless way to an experience of the beloved right at my very center. And it's very wordless, but I believe it's the fruit of all the prayers up to that point. So where some people, they would look at my being a monastic nun, they'd be like, oh, you left it behind, or you made a radical change. And I was like, no, actually, it's the same yes. 5 years old, experienced God in the leaves, same yes as entering the monastery, same yes as it is today, because I was rooted in that yes that's being inspired within. So I would say I have an inner orientation. A powerful practical tool for me, though, is song and chant. There's something in the sound that lets my cells alight in. Like this morning, I was chanting a little bit before we came on, and that lets me experience the beloved through the chant itself. And there is something that is a prayer in that.
I love that. And, we talked about doubt before we got on the show. And one of the quotes that really stuck out to me from your work was that we can doubt our abilities or doubt our goodness, and we can doubt the goodness of others, which I think is easy to do. But every time doubt is embraced, it takes us out of our yes. Doubt stops our movement and it creates pain, and doubt can really limit us. Would you mind talking about what you mean by doubt?
Right. Doubt is a disbelief in the goodness of the moment. And the goodness could be me personally, could be the person standing before me, could be the situation, but it's an actual contrary. It would be like saying love is not eternal, because part of the overflow of saying love is eternal is the understanding that love is in all things, because eternal penetrates everything. And in that penetration, then we're then putting a block to the experience and the recognition of love. It's really so we turn away from what is actually there in the present moment, and we hold an opposite is true. So it's natural. It's a logical thing. If I say love is at the source of everything, and then I say, well, love is not here, then that's a doubt. And that doubt has then closed the door on something that I'm purporting to be an eternal truth. So, I kind of follow, I have this, I'm from geometry, the transitive property of equality. I apply that to a lot. If this, then that, if that, then this must be this, so if you're going to say love is eternal, then love has to be at the source of all things, because creation comes from the timelessness. It's an energy form. And so when we block, when we shut the door on it, what we do is we shut the door on the options that can be there for us. We shut the door on the possibilities and the potentiality of the moment. And we harden in, you mentioned it, in a narrow experience in that you had this weekend in a religious community. We narrow down. It's not that, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And we narrow down and cut ourselves off from all of those potential revelations. And my challenge to anybody listening is try it out. This is a great conversation, but try it out. Put it to the test. Notice what happens when you have a doubt. Oh, I doubt that I am able to ever open my heart again to love. Like, there's a massive one. Put it to the test. See what happens inside you and what your response is when you tell yourself these messages that shut the door. And then see what happens when you hold the doubt. So sometimes when we have disbelief, it's coming from such a trauma that it's too scary to just hold the opposite. Like, just don't doubt. Like that can lead us to really bypass something that needs to be healed. But what we can do is we can say, I'm feeling and thinking doubtfully right now. And then what we've done is we've stepped out of being the doubt, being caught in the doubt, and we are the holder of it. And I guarantee you will experience a certain freshness. And in that, you taste that you're actually more than the doubt, or more than what the doubt is pointing to. So we can even use our very doubts as the portal and the direct experience that we are more than the doubt.
I loved how you said doubt is a disbelief in the goodness of the moment.
Yes.
The moment is good. Each moment has goodness. Each moment is wonderful. That's each morning when I meditate on breathing in, being present in the moment, and breathing out, noticing this is a wonderful moment. And each morning I'm training myself to see how every moment of the day is wonderful. When yesterday I was at lunch with my family, and I saw a notification pop up on my phone, and somebody had written some challenging remarks on a social media post I had made, and had challenged one of my guests and said that my guest was speaking untruths, and that it was a bait and switch, and I could feel my chest tighten, and I could feel myself wanting to defend my guest, and in that moment, I was doubting in the goodness of this person who was writing these things online. So just to give a concrete example here of how doubt can show up, where somebody says something that you think is mean or cruel, and then all of a sudden we doubt in their goodness. What would you do in those types of moments to get back to seeing the goodness in this person and seeing the goodness in this moment?
Right. So stop, right? Because there's a natural, when something that feels unsettling or violent happens, or hurtful, that's an affront. That's coming at. When someone says words that are hurtful, they are coming at. There's an energetic forcefulness that's happening. And I would say the first action step, and this is an action step, is to stop. To stop and to observe. So observing can be reading the post and just simply observing it as though you're not receiving the affront. You're just simply, you're taking it in. You're like, like with a little curiosity, like, wow, this is interesting. Like, and then take a next step and remind, at the center of every human being, whether it's covered over with trauma or not, at the very center is the beloved. So I love this one adage, and I'm pretty sure it's a good friend of mine, another Carmelite. I was Carmelite from 1500s, John of the Cross. I'm pretty sure he's the one that said it, but I've taken it on so much as my own that it's kind of my own too. Look with the beloved's eyes, and you will see the beloved's face. So when I stop and I observe, I'm letting myself step into me as the beloved in a very authentic way, not in a way that denies the layers of the affront. And then when I look from that place, I give myself the opportunity to see the beloved in what's before me, even in the affront. And usually what will happen is the charge will disappear off of the affront, because the charge is coming from such a place of fear that's not where love exists. It's not where love dwells. So when the charge disappears, then there's an ability to connect genuinely with the agency from which the affront is coming. Now, you may not know the person, right? A social media post might be of somebody you've never met and isn't even a friend on Facebook, but somehow listened to the show and posted. But it calls into action our fundamental beliefs. And it reminds us that what we really stand for is what life is about. It matters. If I say love is at the center of all things, it matters that I live it. I get to walk my talk then when I get hit with these things. So I have the opportunity in it. And over time, maybe immediately, but I have found over time, as we develop the skillfulness, it actually becomes playful. Like even when I said, it made me kind of smile, like, like that silly little person, right?
And that's the place I came to, not immediate. So immediately I wanted to react and defend. And I resisted. So this was me stopping. I stopped. Just as you said, stopping can be an action. And I decided not to respond. But I didn't take it the next step, which was, as you had just said, look with the eyes of the beloved, and the face of the beloved will reveal itself in that person. And that would have been a really nice step to take right then, is to see with compassion. So I want to make sure this very clear. This isn't a superiority thing. This isn't, I'm loving, I'm compassionate, I'm kind, you're not, I'm going to look down on you with mercy. No, it's not superiority, because that just gets more into the ego. It's more, I'm going to look as love at your core, which is also love. And I can see through the pain that you're experiencing, the fear that you're experiencing, to even write a post like that. I could just see that there's some pain and suffering that would even have you attack somebody that is out in the world trying to do good in the world. And know that, hey, that's probably doesn't feel super good to feel that way. And just send you love.
And I've always found, along the lines of what you're saying, it lets us, this is to me what we're talking about when we talk about humility. And humility is not a self-deprecating experience or a quality, but humility is seeing truth. And in the truth of it, when we stop and we come to those deeper levels, we meet in a way that's friend to friend, like vulnerable. vulnerable. Like you said, it's not, I'm the master. I'm the student here. I'm the student. It's another thing that I try to practice. And in my first book, Love Calls, I write about it because I discovered it greatly in monastic life. Everything became my teacher. Everything. The moon, the stars, the sisters, the chant, my inner states, the changing nature of my inner states, everything became my teacher. I became a student of everything. Now that is an amazing gift that we can cultivate within ourselves. And again, it's not self-deprecating, it's opening up to an experience of really the magnificence of the moment and becoming an agent of that coming forward. I know I had a message that came once, this was years ago, and I wrote some article, something about alcoholism or addiction or something, I can't remember. And it was coming from a book called Addiction and Grace by Gerald May that I think is a very seminal work in spiritual growth. And I said something, but however I wrote it or said it, it hit a really, really big chord in somebody. And they wrote back, and I know this person was a friend, not a good friend, but a friend in another city that I knew. And they wrote a long thing in return, feeling triggered by me and feeling that what I wrote dismissed the real suffering that happens in addiction, which I wasn't. I was shining a light in one way because every state has so many different angles to it. It's like a diamond that's got all these different edges and angles, and we can't necessarily write about the whole diamond. Sometimes we write about the one side reflecting the yellow or the one side reflecting the red, and we focus in for a moment. So I wasn't actually dismissing other parts that go into addiction. And I had to really sit with how to respond. I had to really stop, not because I was triggered in that moment, but because I didn't know how to respond. How do I respond in a meaningful way that meets this person, that lets them know that I hear them and doesn't diminish what I wanted to say, wasn't defending what I wanted to say? And it took me a couple of days to really understand what was the best way to respond. And it was being willing to be in the unknown and ask the right kinds of questions. How can I be true? How can I be honest? How can I be loving? True, honest, loving. Wouldn't that be something if we stopped before anything that confused us and said, how can I be true? How can I be honest? How can I be loving? Whoosh. Like, how,
That would certainly guide us to living the way that we want to live.
Right. And how can I be willing to be true? How can I be willing to be honest? Okay.
No, and you have said that you've got a great gift of empathy, and you just described it so well in that story. But you said that we're able to see that we're all kind of interconnected in the same field of energy.
Right. Yes, I have had everything to learn about my personal path of being empathic. I came into the world, and it's interesting because I recently had an evolutionary astrology reading done that was amazing. And one of the things that came forward there that articulated something I've experienced is I came into the world with a natural God consciousness, a natural merging into that presence in life with others, with nature, with everything about life. So that actually wasn't something I needed to grow into. What I've needed to grow into is, what does it mean to be an individual and have this inner sense of we're all connected. We are all in the energy. We are all the energy of consciousness. And it continues to be my learning ground without diminishing and with understanding the nature of what's my energy as an individual that is connected to you as an individual. And I'm not your energy, and yet we are all in that energy of consciousness. That's a very, very subtle and nuanced learning ground. And it's been the place that of my learning. I used to take on people's illnesses because my natural response would be compassion, but energetically, it would be compassion that had boundaries that so united with the suffering that I would find myself experiencing it, everything from physical to emotional to mental. And I had to discover, oh my gosh, that's actually not me. It is me because I'm saying yes to it, but it's not actually me. And making those distinctions. And my way is not so much boundaries. My way is, you know what, if I grow in the God source that I am, if I'm the light that I am, what's going to happen is I'm going to vibrate with that light, and all that is not resonant with my vibration as eternal light will not marry itself with me naturally. So that's my way of operating, as we're all the energy of consciousness. And there's a great school, lifeharmonized.com has some great tools. He has holographic tools that can help us cultivate that vibration, that frequency. Like Tesla said, it's all vibration and frequency. It can help us cultivate that frequency.
Rather than shield yourself and protect yourself and put these layers of boundary around you, so that, like bubble wrap, so that you don't take on all the suffering of everyone, you do the opposite. You make yourself more powerful. You channel more of the light into yourself, so that as you're interacting with others with compassion, their suffering doesn't impact you.
Right. And then I'm freer to be more of service to that.
Yeah. Right. Because if we join them down in the darkness, we're not able to pull them up into the light, because now we're just two people that are suffering.
Yeah, it's like What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams, that great movie.
Yes. I love that movie.
Oh, I cry every time I watch it. It is so right. But the where the love took them both was absolutely incredible. And what a learning. Yes.
So, you had said God is love and God does not want us to sacrifice. He does not punish. Now, this goes against a lot of what is written in the Old Testament, especially. And so your life as a nun, there's a lot of evidence in the Bible that says God does punish and he does want us to sacrifice. What do you mean when you say that he does not want us to sacrifice and he does not punish?
Right. So again, great subtle question. When we're disconnected from ourselves, so a false identity, let's say I am so worried about money that I develop a tremendous amount of greed and I concentrate only on making money. And I do not tend the deeper longing that what I'm really wanting is a sense of abundance and security. But I displace my power into something. There will be a certain way that I have suffering take place. And in that way, we could use that word punishment, right? Because I don't like that word, because that seems like the divine is going like that, or like hitting us with a hammer. But we'll experience pain, we'll experience suffering because we're disconnected with ourselves. That does happen in our life. People may talk about karma, and I'm not so of the understanding of karma. I do believe in past lives and that, but there is something that our ignorance of who we are will butt up against. It's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And there is going to be something of pain that happens with that ignorance. It's not that, I keep trying. It's not that, I'm discouraged, I'm despairing, I'm angry, I hate, I will, and our ignorance keeps propelling that. So in that way, there is a certain retribution that happens because we're denying ourselves the real answer to the call of stepping into who we are. So that exists. But we're not called to give up our essential nature. And our essential nature is an abundant nature, is God-filled, is happiness each moment, is living in a good mood. That's part of our nature. We're not meant to sacrifice those things, but we are meant to be. So the word sacrifice at its root is really about being made holy. And in some methodologies, there's the thought, I have to give up everything in order to experience what we call holiness.
You did that as a nun. You gave up everything of your former life to experience the holy.
Yeah, and but in a way though, I was stepping into I was already so full. I was so on fire with love. I mean, I had 5 years of these tremendously overtaking. I was like Eckhart Tolle sitting on the park bench after his real big moment of illumination. I mean, I was so taken in this divine embrace that I wanted more. So I didn't feel that I was giving up. I mean, I did. It was there was a great pain in knowing that I was stepping away from my family, that I was making a choice that we would not be in each other's physical lives. That was the only real pain and giving up. But the fire of the desire and the love were so great. For me, the experience was stepping into all the fullness. I wasn't sacrificing. I was like going into the banquet. I wasn't saying no banquet for the sake of something. I was going into the banquet. And that's what I believe every person is called to do. We make choices for our happiness. So for instance, let's say I am always self-deprecating as a form of sacrifice. Like, I want to build you up, so I'll always put myself down. Now, that's cutting off from myself, but there's something deep, deep down that is gaining some reward from that action, because my belief is saying this is good for me. Now, it's a bit unhealthy and delusional, but at its core, it's good for me. I'm not doing it for the bad of me. I'm doing it because there's something in me that says that this is a good thing to do. So that's where we tease apart these things. We're always making choices for our own good. It's just whether we're aligned with what the eternal goodness is, or whether we're fragmented into some place where we have trauma or need of healing, and we have a false sense of self fueled by ignorance. So that's what I really believe the inspired texts of all traditions, Bible included, are really drawing us to through their stories, is to get to these deeper levels. But we as human beings tend to stay at that black and white. God thinks I'm going to this, I'm going to hell. Like, we make it black and white, but real maturity reveals to us that it's not black and white at all. I felt like I downloaded blah 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 blah. Sorry.
It was all so good. Yeah. Yeah. And you used a couple of concrete examples in there, like the pursuit of money in the form of greed, and that when we at the same time cut ourselves off from love or feeling the abundance that's within us, if it's driven by scarcity, there's going to be some hard lessons that come on the other side of that. Or self-deprecating humor, which I have friends who I just listen to continually put themselves down as they think that maybe that's a way to access humility. And I know our words are so powerful that those beliefs that are behind them are going to cause some pain for them, that they don't have to act that way. Right. It's just I keep wanting to have a mirror in front of me that shows me when I'm saying things that are driven from unconscious beliefs that I think are for my greater good, that ultimately are harming me. But I think that's what this so-called punishment really is. When we bump into an unpleasant experience in the world, that's our time to be reflective and say, why did this come about? How did this come about? What part did I have in bringing this into my life? And then, are there some changes I should make as I reflect on this experience that hurts?
Yeah. Right. And again, you just spoke from such an intimate place. So it comes back to me, to intimacy, the call to get close to ourselves, the call to let those questions be the ones that we let really inform us. And we discover there's a beautiful mystic, Teresa of Avila. It was her feast day 2 days ago. And again, I'm not really identified as Christian or anything anymore, but I have all these amazing spiritual friends in all traditions. Some of my beloved ones are Carmelite, like I was. And she says, God's healing light has always come with great gentleness. And there's something to that. And I think if we look closely at our moments of healing, because we've all had them, through one thought that got changed, through one way that we relaxed and found our fear dissolved, through healing work that we do, through a moment of true communion with a friend or a loved one. We've all had moments. If we were to just stop in that moment and recognize, I think we would discover that that light is very, very gentle. It comes into those places within ourselves with real tenderness, real tenderness. Not like we are. We tend to take the 2x4.
Well, and that brings me back to where you said everything is grace for me. Well, if I think about my experience with the grace of God, it is always tender and gentle.
Yeah.
It's never punishing. I've never felt like I've had his finger wagged at me, or that he was smiting me, or that he was bringing down the hammer on my head. I've always felt that I was being gently guided and always loved. And so in my personal experience, it's just these stories of others and their punishment that I've read about my whole life, where I could say, oh, God is a punishing God, but not for me.
Yes. And yeah, well put. Well put. Right. We see a certain, like even if you look at the Hindu tradition, and you've got that deity Kali. So Kali is a form of divinity that's represented in statues as a woman that is fierce. I mean, swords, like some of them have like, a whole ring of swords, and the tongue is out and the eyes are fierce, like with fire. And, and that's really intimidating. That whole image of Kali, that whole image is intended to be experienced as, let me put it in like God words. I love you so much, I will not settle for you settling for less than what you are. I am going to be fierce that you self-realize, that you wake up to the power and beauty of you are. So what if we reframed all our God stories, that anytime we kind of get the sword stories, we take it like that? No, you're worth more than that. You just settle for something less than what you are. Now, that to me, we can find a place for that fierceness and that cutting through things, that not settling for any action that stops short of our own divinity. Isn't that a great way to reframe those
I
punishments?
thought that was beautiful. I love that. Yes, God is fiercely pursuing us.
Yes.
Fiercely pursuing us to awaken. I'm going to do that in my mind, because sometimes I sit in church with my family and I listen to some of the stories, and they trigger me.
Yeah.
But as I get triggered now, I'm going to remember this conversation, that, oh, actually God's using his sword to awaken me, to awaken all of us, because he's pursuing us that hard. And we're going to wrap up with this, because you end your book with this beautiful quote, and I'm going to read it, and I just want to get your take on it. Miracles are happening in the naked light. When we let go of our defenses, which keep us cloaked, when we get naked, we discover the grace in each moment. Each moment becomes a miracle in and of itself.
I love that line too. I'm like, thank you, Spirit. Thank you. There's so much to rest into there, right? I think in my experience, which is part of what contributed to that line, there is consolation, there is clarity, there is insight, there is freedom, there is direction, there is exaltation, there is healing. Like in that one line, isn't there all of that in there? Like if we really just sit with that line, it's got within its words, it is a potential for great grace. And we get to be the agent to make it actual.
How beautiful. I've just loved this conversation. I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it as much as I have. Please go to goodmoodshow.com and get the ebook. It is excellent. Please buy her book. I mean, Kimberly, your book is exceptional. I loved reading it. I'm sure there's people right now that are listening that are going to want to learn more from you. How would you have them learn more?
Right. Just one commercial that you can get the book print, ebook, or audio. The audiobook is published too. And my publisher had me read it. So you get, it's cool when you have the author read it, because then you get that felt sense that they lived the words. And my website, kimberlybraun.com, you can find, I do private sessions, I have online courses, we have online spiritual community. I usually offer a fair amount of retreats. I don't have any on the schedule right now with the book and everything, but you can get a hold of me. You can join my newsletter. We do videos. I do meditation immersions, articles. There are all sorts of ways that we can connect. And just know, if you're listening and you feel inclined, I'm here to be a friend on your journey. That's it. That's my call.
Well, my heart is open, wide open, just having this conversation with you. I've so enjoyed meeting you, and I've so enjoyed learning from you. And y'all, I hope you enjoyed it too. Reach out to Kimberly, kimberlybraun.com. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.